diversity is a huge subject for anyone who works in tech. We all know there are some fundamental issues, but also diversity at the moment is commonly seen as the general diversities, be it race, gender, age. And what I want to show you guys is my favorite image in the world, which is the waterline of visibility, or otherwise known as the diversity iceberg. And the reason why this is key is because you may not even realize how diverse your teams already are, but also often we forget about the other diversities, things like invisible illnesses, things like beliefs, and also even elements such as economic backgrounds and being able to get into the careers that we're in. The industry is changing now. So we have seen a massive rapid increase in diversity within the industry, but we still have a huge way to go. And I think that's why it's so great to have so many people today, both here, but also on the panel, with a really eclectic way of careers, length in career, and also experiences as well. We will share out this image of the diversity iceberg on the meetup page later, and it is a great thing to show your colleagues. It's a great thing to show your recruitment teams, but also every so often reminding yourself about how extensive diversity actually is. So I think over to the panel. Can you flip the, oh, it's the last slide. Sorry, we are not giving slides to the panels. I have my questions on my page. So we've got quite a few questions today, and we will open up the audience later as well, so you can ask some questions as well. And if you don't get your question answered today, I know all these guys are very active on LinkedIn, and you can definitely give them a ping. And likewise, if you do want to post a question in the meetup group or our Slack group, go for it. Challenge them. It's always, I'm sure one of them will answer. So I think the first question we really want to ask is, what is diversity to you guys? And who would like to take the microphone first?
No pressure. So hello, I'm Susanna. I'm a trainee software engineer at Zoa. I have two passions in life, that's coding and renewable energy, and I am the luckiest person in the world because I combine them day in, day out, and I love it. Diversity, I don't want to say all the obvious things that maybe Lacey has already mentioned, the things we think of like gender, race, and neurodiversity and all the others. So I'll say that diversity to me means that nobody should be blocked from doing what they love because of who they are or how they are. Everybody should have equal access to doing what they love.
That's a wonderful answer. I think it epitomizes what we're trying to achieve in this as well. Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Julia. So I have been in tech or in a managed service industry for in IT for at least 7 years now, and had a bit of a break for children before that, and then worked for a previous IT company before that. And I think throughout my career and just in life, really, I've seen a big change with diversity, and to me, it just means having people around you that just bring you so much joy day in, day out, because they have so many interesting stories and beliefs, and just being in a diverse environment, just it gives you so much fulfillment, and so to me it's really important having different people around you.
I'm Helen Davies, so I'm the founder of Practical Wisdom. We are a not-for-profit that support neurodivergent adults, and when I'm not doing that, I'm a clinical director in Sussex, and I'm actually a nurse and have been for about 35 years, so not long. Don't judge my age. So in terms of diversity, I think it is a lot of things. I think for me, there's two types. There's the visible type of diversity that we think about. And then there's the more hidden diversity, whether that is somebody with a hidden disability, or whether that's actually cultural differences and different things like that. Because I'm half Macedonian, so everyone expects my values and beliefs to be just like an English culture, but actually it's not. And it's really weird. When I was in Whitechapel, I found I had a lot in common with my Bangladeshi work colleagues because our views of family and norms, and that's my family is like my aunts, my uncles, as well as my cousins, so I had a very broad, and I think that's the whole point, isn't it? It's that you can't just judge the diversity, not just about what you see, but also about what you don't see. And there needs to be a space where we can all be individuals. And it's all about, obviously no harm to others, but a space where we can all grow and develop. And it doesn't mean the same adjustments are needed for everyone, because as lovely as that is, that might not work for one person that does for the other. And I think it's about us all meeting each other on like an individual basis. So for me, it's that kind of broad approach to diversity. Although I would say I also chair the Transgender Health Inequalities board in Sussex, and we're the first and only place to do it in the country for the last year. So I obviously do care about transgender stuff as well as neurodiversity, because that's my company. So yeah, so I do some of the classic stuff, but I do think it's about us all having a place.
Thank you very much. I'm Czarina Barnsby. I'm an AWS community builder. I'm also a Women in the Cloud ambassador and advisor. I mentor over at Clothing Black Females, and I'm also head of technical architecture for a technology consultancy. Diversity to me, I would echo every single thing that everyone has said on this panel. In terms of the diversity of iceberg, which I think is a really, really great way in order to represent and showcase the plethora of different things that people really need to look at when they look at the word diversity. It's about inclusion. It's about bringing together all the different voices and amplifying that all together. And together, when we are able to look beneath the surface of that waterline, we're able to realize that we've all got really great things that we can bring in. For myself, the parts of diversity which I've able to do from the 10 years that I've been volunteering, working with schools, getting people to consider STEM careers. I've worked with charities and training providers, hence why Lacey was saying about learning and development and getting into cloud careers is something that I've always been passionate about. But it's also things in terms of socioeconomic statuses, where we're located in the country as well. I firmly believe in the phrase, you've got to see it to be it. And is one of those things that there are so many different underrepresented groups beyond just gender, race, sexual orientation as well. But we're also looking at the parental status, opportunities and education, and giving awareness that there is more than the traditional paths in order to get into roles within tech.
Absolutely brilliant answers. And I think we can absolutely say that this epitomizes what we're trying to achieve with anything diversity, and also how broad the spectrum of diversity is. So thank you very much for your answers, guys. So the next one I want to ask you guys is, how did you personally get into your roles, and what was your journey like, and what was the challenges that you faced in terms of your diversity in building up your careers? Don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, I'm not shy. Actually, it's very funny. So 35 years, you think it's a really long time in nursing, but actually it only happened because I did the entrance test for a laugh. And me and my mate Murphy, we were sitting on a bus, and he had an IQ test, and he was like, "Oh, I got a really high score." And I was like, he said, "I bet you can't beat it." And I was like, "Of course I want to." And so I looked at this very studiously for the whole weekend. And then come Monday, it was actually an IQ-based test. And I'd done revision without even knowing it. So I aced it. But that's only because my short-term memory was activated. And that was handy, because I was like trying to compete against my friend. And so I had absolutely like really bad qualifications. I'm dyslexic. I've got ADHD as well, and a little bit a few other neurospiciness. And basically, yeah, so he didn't go so well at school. So I was amazed that I even got a job. So I got this job, and it stuck. And what I love is it looks like it's consistent. There's nothing consistent about me. So basically, it's because you can job hop in the NHS, but you just look like you haven't. So it says one employer, but it's a lot of different jobs, a lot of different roles. Spot the ADHD, love urgent care, love all that kind of stuff. So actually, it's been great fun. And I found that my ADHD was a superpower, because you can like it. If it's interesting, you'll do it. If it's boring, you're like, I'm done. So there's always a drama in A&E, so I love it. So that was really fun. But the dyslexia, I didn't tell anyone, right? I have been dodging all those forms for so long. I was like, maybe if I don't quite sign, that I have a disability, or I don't, sorry, employers, but I did lie a few times for decades. And I can say I've only felt comfortable coming out as neurodiverse fully as I am now, and now I'm neurodiverse champion, probably in the last 4 years. And how crazy is that? Because I'm in an organization where I feel valued, where I feel I can be neurodiverse, that I can be non-binary, and I love Brighton, it's literally a non-event. So, I think for me, that's been amazing to get to this point, but it was an interesting journey with, we don't have enough time for all the mistakes I made along the way.
I'd love to follow that up just because I have a few similarities, if that's okay. So I don't really know where to start, but I have an academic background. I have 2 master's degrees. I did all my qualifications in sustainability, and then I couldn't get a job in COVID, really couldn't. So I started in renewable energy, which was my dream to be, but in customer services. And that I was like you, I'm also neurodivergent, and I came in and didn't want to disclose, except that after 2 weeks I would have been fired if I hadn't disclosed. So I had to disclose. And it turned into a massive strength because I became a neurodiversity champion as well. I, singled myself out from hundreds of other agents. I made a name for myself in a company of 1,000 people. And then it's funny because I gave a talk on neurodiversity, and I finished it by saying, please hire people who are neurodivergent. But I never realized I was talking about myself, because when a product management role, like a beautiful step up, came up and I applied for it, the interviewers knew who I was and I didn't know who they were. So that's so triggers bad publicity. And in my first week of product, I tried code, and it was like the lights came on in my life. It was like the sun came out, and it never, ever, ever went away again. Like, I love it so much. And so I wanted to talk just a tiny bit more about that. What happened was I went a bit nuts. It took me 2 months of coding to commit for life, another month to really find my direction. Shout out to Silicon Brighton, who's like all events I attended, and it was at the async meetup where I met JavaScript, and that was it. It was love at first sight, and I ditched Python, never again. And that was it, the front end for life. And all of that happened so fast. I started a blog. I got hired internally pretty quickly, and I just wanted to talk. And so I started as a trainee in March, and I've been a full-time trainee ever since. I was saying to the panel, I only work with men. My managers have always been men. My product manager's a man. Every single one of my teammates is a man, and every single one of my mentors is a man. I've been I do have one female mentor, but she's outside the workplace. And I just want to say very quickly 2 things. That firstly, in terms of barriers, neurodiversity is not a barrier to learning to code. Like, one of the reasons I probably got hired so fast was because they knew I was neurodivergent, and they were like, okay, she's gonna be good at it. So that was the stereotype definitely helped, and it is true. I have obviously faced other challenges in the workplace around communication, around managers, but I've been lucky enough to have really good management and to work with it. And I just want to finish off by saying that gender, because I told my team this morning, I said to them, I'm going to talk at a tech event tonight, and I'm going to talk about being a woman in tech. And I'm going to say, men have made my career. Like, I've had some difficult experiences, but not in the workplace. And my career has been built by men, everyone from our COO to the manager who first noticed me, to all the managers I've had, to at one point I got told off for having too many mentors. I had to start turning people down to mentor me because telling someone else that has happened to. And I said to my team this morning, enthusiasm knows no gender. And if you're enthusiastic, people will fall over themselves to mentor you. At least that's what happened to me. So my career has been made by men, and as long as, and myself, mostly me, but also them. And so as long as you're around the right people, and as long as you're enthusiastic, I don't think your gender can stop you.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'd like to follow up on really gender really as well, like you're saying, women in tech. So I mean, my last seven years have been in a very similar role as an MSP, but also I went into IT kind of by accident. I actually trained in business travel, but ended up in IT, and then I had a bit of a career break while I had children. I say I had a career break. I did a lot of part-time work and worked for lots of shops and did a lot of random jobs while I had children, and actually retrained and did my level 2 NVQ in childcare to actually work at my son's preschool, so that while they were small, I could still kind of retrain and do something different, but be around my children rather than being at work. And I think that made a difference to my career. And the reason I'm kind of champion women now is that I think that kind of put at least a 10-year break in my career. I think that if I had continued in IT and not had children and not chose to actually stay at home and raise children as well, and I think that I would have been in a management position or a lot different position now. And that's the sort of thing that women face, is that choice of either having children later and carrying on with their career, or putting it on hold, basically having children and then kind of going back to it, which is where I am. And I just think that we need to look at how we can change that, how we can, if the employers can get so much enrichment out of women being in workplace with just some flexibility, or even just having that. We have a standard maternity leave, but it's a bit different actually having bringing women back that want to raise the children and be at work, so that they can still get the best out of those women that want to stay in that company, rather than just putting them in the accounts department part-time just because you have to, it'd be good to actually, nothing against that, but I'm just saying it'd be good to try and help them not have that break in the career. And I think that's definitely would have helped me. And I think we need to get young women and girls into the tech industry, and we need to look at ways of doing that, and so that we're not in such a male dominate environment. And personally, there isn't any women that I've never worked with a female engineer in my companies, and the females that are in my businesses have been in support and in other areas, and it's definitely male dominated. And I think we haven't got enough women that are championing other women that are in those positions to actually fly the flag. And the more women that we have in the industry, the more others will be encouraged to join. We just need to look at ways of keeping them. Just because I did a level 2 in childcare and did my NVQ, I learned all sorts of things doing that, and that brings something completely different to a role. I might not have other qualifications, but it's having that difference. And I think that we just need to really be encouraging that with women as well.
Well, thank you for that. Before I talk about my career journey and what got me into the current role I hold in tech, I just want to do a little shout out to some amazing things I heard from the other panel speakers. Firstly, neurodiversity is a superpower, very much so. Another shout out to the male allies as well. In my company, we have, women tech employee groups, diversity, equity, inclusion, and also, the women in tech and allyship. Allies mean the world in terms of being able to, champion women and raise voices. Sometimes, from my perspective, I don't necessarily celebrate my own achievements. Talking about yourself and what you've done and what you've achieved has always been sometimes difficult, probably not what you see on my LinkedIn, to be fair. A very different version of me from that aspect. And also something which you mentioned as well in regards to, keeping women in tech. It's actually really interesting. I like stats, so you'll hear a few of them from me today. But from the women in tech, 50% leave by the age of 35, which is really interesting. So it's not just looking at that early careers aspect, it's what we're doing to accelerate people's development, to get people from mid-level, career accelerators. I do run a mid-level career accelerator program, but also to get them to those senior leadership roles. we were talking about stats today in regards to applying for jobs, which I know you're going to speak about later on, but it's really interesting from that aspect of how we can look at supporting people from all walks of life through their careers. So a little bit about me and what got me to my role in tech. I guess for me, I had a little bit of a different upbringing. I actually had a woman in tech. It was my mum. She retrained into computing through FDM's retraining program. So I knew nothing different apart from my mum works in tech, decided to study tech and computing at college, and that room was completely different. Did anyone here study computing at all, or IT? IT. How many women were there in your? I'd like to think it's different, but I was literally the only one. Wow. So the numbers were given from someone from the audience was 5 women and 70 men. Wow. I would have liked to think, bearing in mind I'm 40 next year, that from when I was picking what courses to do at college, it would change. But I'm guessing not so much these days. Yeah, so I went into college looking at computing, realized that I was the only girl in the room. I did really well, which probably didn't help things as well. And yeah, got good scores and all that stuff. But the last assignment involved me actually being in that room because I didn't have a computer at home. You know, we weren't on one of those well-off families from growing up or anything like that. So I just didn't turn in the last project because I didn't want to be in that classroom. And if I'd thought about it in hindsight, if I raised my hand up and said, hey, can I come in after hours or anything like that, I probably would have continued on. But I did the typical thing which you did back when I went to school, when universities was not at the price it is today, where you look at your results and you pick the 2 best grades. That is one thing that I do tell people when I go back to schools these days, is don't just pick what other people say you are good at or what you test well at. Follow what you're interested in. For me, I love computing, I liked IT, I like business. And, you know, I was quite fortunate I did well at school, but I decided, oh, look, I got slightly higher grades in English and media. Bearing in mind, I did English and media degree. I don't really like reading books. I was just good at it. So went into English and media, used to sneak into the lecturers, sorry, Sussex University. I did get found out because it was clear as day that I did not belong there. And yeah, made friends with all the people who were doing coding and computing at Sussex University. Yeah, so after university, naturally after doing an English and media degree, I went into financial services. Makes sense, but that was what the grad programs were at the time. One of the things that I really liked about financial services was actually something I really liked at schools, which was fashion back in the day. I used to like looking at magazines and fashion and things like that, looking at what the newest, latest and greatest things that were around and what was going on, figuring out what was within my budget, not much, but adapting it based on what I thought would suit me. And that was something which was also relevant in the financial service industry, looking at all the different regulations, figuring out what's going out. And all that stuff is also pertinent and really essential in the tech industry, which is why I gravitated towards there after looking at financial services and going into website design and falling into a managed services company, my old background from that aspect. But yeah, the great thing about technology is that it's fast-paced, ever-changing, and you know, it's rapidly evolving market, and that's all the things back when I was at school that I really loved. And you know, linking it to that fashion element works well for Talks for Schools as well. But yeah, worked in IT 14 years, did lots of different roles, but always led teams, trained people from IT apprentices and giving a alternative career path than to traditional university pathway. Retrained probably about 2.5 years ago from Microsoft and infrastructure to AWS and tech. And I did that through an AWS Academy where I brought in and set up a women in allyship tech groups, just because, yeah, those stats, they were still the same from that aspect. Yeah, I now work for a technology consultancy, and very different from what I've heard from the panel today, but I am pleased to say that I have never worked with so many women. It might be a reflection of the company that I work for. I lead a team, and maybe it's because I'm the head of that department. But yeah, in August, it was 38% females. And it's really great to be in a position where we're doing that mid-level accelerator program as well. But yeah, that's what brought me into tech.
Brilliant. I think it really inspires everyone in terms of the journeys that you guys have been through, but also the challenges and actually the differences in the journeys as well. Have you answered that? I just realized. Yep. But it does lead on to a question actually, because a couple of mentions here about allies, and I think it's really important that diversity is also inclusive. I can't say it, inclusivity. What it's not is saying that one group's better than another, or we should focus on certain areas. I think it's allowing us all, as somebody said earlier, that single voice, being able to amplify our skill sets and being able to lean into our diversities really. So the next question really is, how can allies help support diversity? What advice would you give to an ally to support that?
I have a beautiful example of this from one of my mentors. He's not watching, I don't think, but I can send him a link. So I have a really, really lovely mentor at work. He's called Jake. And so I gave a talk about neurodiversity at my company. It was like my second one. And he just came over to me afterwards. This was a time when I was accumulating mentors, you see. And he came over to me. I think a week after my talk, I was in London in head office, and we'd only ever spoken once before. We'd never worked together in our lives. And he said to me, "Hey, Susanna," because I gave that talk, a week after I started as an engineer, or even the same week. So I kind of talked about my journey and that. And he said, I want to do something to help you. I don't care if it's in working hours, outside of working hours. And by the way, I had a lot of colleagues who were actually really willing to help me outside of working hours as well. And I did a lot of that as well. He said, I don't care when it is, I want to help you. And so management had just said to me, stop doing so much outside of hours. So I said, okay, let's meet in working hours. And which is a nice thing for management to say. And, this was in March, and 9 months later, he's still mentoring me. He also retrained into tech, so we have so much in common. And he's great at explaining things to beginners. And I went out of work to do a boot camp for 3 months, and so I stopped all kind of about those kind of activities. But I came back to him, and he supported me throughout the boot camp and helped me with my final presentation. And really, I gave him a shout out on our work channel, which I want to quote. But because I think this is exactly it. I think allyship is not just waiting for people to come to you. Allyship is reaching out and taking someone by the hand. Because we say that, I used to train people in diversity and inclusion as well when we joined my old employer. And we always said the same thing. We said diversity and inclusion is a party. I don't know if you'll know that analogy as well. It's quite well known. But the point is that diversity is that you plan the party and you invite different people. Inclusion is you plan for them to kind of take part. So you ask what food they want, what music they want. But belonging is, and I love this, is literally when you're at the party, taking my hand to dance with you. And I guess this is going to sound cringy, but that's what Jake did. That's what my mentor did. He took my hand and asked me to dance. Not really, but he took my hand and he pulled me up to where he was, because there's a great saying, which is never look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. And I was very much helped up. So that's an example.
That's wonderful. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I mean, allyship's massively important tool that a lot of people can do, and sometimes it can be simply asking, how are your colleagues doing? Because some people will be out in whichever way, and some people won't be. So it's a check-in. That's really important. There's other things, like the fact I wouldn't even be a clinical director had they not done an entrance test. So what are your gatekeeping? How are you recruiting people? Because if you give them a chance, more, a lot of neurodiverse people, but not the only people from deprived areas, people with English as a second language, they might not get the academic qualifications. So what about actually having more than one route into what you're offering? because it's about, do they have the skills and capability and the development opportunity? So I think, you know, that entrance test, as amusing it was, and I still haven't actually bought my mate Murphy that beer, but it's really good. You know, it can make a massive difference. So I think that's really important. And actually, I had people along the way who helped me when I didn't even realise. So I know you're all tech people, so sorry, do you remember these things before, like pen and paper? But so there was, it's really old school, but basically on the wards, we used to have to do written letters to the district nurses. And mine was so shocking that the ward sister was rewriting mine. And I had no idea. I found out a year later, and she didn't have the heart to tell me. But bless her, she'd been covering my ass for a long time. And I was like, okay, obviously I need to improve that. But you know, that was really sweet that she'd like looked out for me. And I think looking out for each other is part of it as well. So I think the allyships is really good. And also you can complement each other's skills, you know. I'm also trustee for ADHD Aware. And I love the fact that we also, you know, obviously a lot of us ADHD, funny that, but there's some who aren't, you know, and are more neurotypical. And that it's a massive, it complements each other. You know, because when I'm going off on one, which I might be in a minute, I'll try and come back. You know, they can bring you back. You know, so you can complement each other, and it's done in a warm way with each other, and that's that mutual respect and understanding where each other's shortfalls are means that you can play that tag. So I think allyship, it gives that creative space to do that. So I think there's a space where we can just join, you know, with each other, with our complementary skills, really.
I like that. Thank you for sharing. So we're talking about allyship and advice. I'm going to approach it from a couple different angles. So from a something which I've learned from the Women in Tech Allyship group that I'm part of is just certain things like phrases that we say. So for example, you know, you try and use inclusive language, such as using the word team, folks, everyone, as opposed to, you know, using what you have to admit I did say a lot of, which was guys and things like that. It becomes common practice. I've always included myself within that, but that is probably because, like most of us here working in tech, you know, we were the only person in the room, and we'd all naturally put ourselves in that word. So I know that is a topical thing, whether or not it's inclusive, because it is for everyone else, but it's using words like that and being aware of certain things like microaggressions, or when, you know, by accident or whatever way, if you're in a team meeting, it's always the woman, irrespective of her rank or her role, that has to take notes or arrange meetings. It's being able to signpost and go, you know what, I'll do it this time, or next time, can you do it, to give that, you know, other opportunities for organization skills improvement to other men in the room, not just for women to sort out just because, you know, people might decide that they're good at it. In terms of a diversity aspect, it's awareness, really. It's be curious and learn. It's something we were talking about actually earlier in the meeting today about for performance managers. You can be an ally if you just make yourself aware of how, you know, you can help support people, or, you know, give people an opportunity to say what support they want. You know, companies and organizations can do great things like, you know, work with your, you know, practical wisdom in order to create that awareness of, you know, how to help support the employees. So just constantly making yourself aware and, you know, being that voice and helping people. Most of the time people know what they want. Is just having a way of amplifying that and spreading the message, really. But yeah, also thank you to the allies who helped me through my career as well.
Yeah, I'd like to elaborate that on like you're saying about having allies at work. So, and the checking in, I'm just sometimes just coming in the morning, like sometimes I feel like I've done a day's work before I get to work. And I think you can just see me coming through the door and I'm like all flustered and I'm like trying to pick up multiple bags and jackets, and I've just dropped off another forgotten PE kit that he's left at home, and I've had to quickly run to the school and get back to the work. And sometimes it's just like your colleague just checking in, and it's normally my female colleague, to be fair, that would just say, you know, "Hi Jules, you all right? Do you want a cup of tea?" And I'm just like, yeah, just really looking really flustered, and just like checking in to see if you're okay. But also, I think that I try and be an ally to other people and other women in my roles, and definitely previously, where some women don't have the confidence to raise ideas in meetings, and the ideas that are theirs and they're valid and they should definitely raise them, or suggestions. And if we're doing a kind of session where we're looking at the company as a whole and making improvements, I've found in experience that those women have not wanted to step forward and be the person to put their name to something, and feeling that they might get belittled, or that idea might not be taken forward. And I kind of just champion them, say, yes, say it. You know, they often come to me beforehand saying, "Oh, I really want to say this, but I don't know if I should do it or not." And I'm like, yes, definitely say it. And I'm there to back you up. I'm there to, if I want some reassurance, I'm there, and I'll support you in that, and raising that, or raising an issue as well. Again, they might feel not confident in raising issues in meetings, and again, I would be that ally to say, "I'm here. I'm probably the loudest in the room, so I'll back you up." And I think that we take on kind of different traits as well, and I think sometimes you have to take on masculine traits as well as women, to stand up for other women in the industry, and stand up for yourself. And not that I've wanted to, but I think I've naturally done that, and so now I'm probably the person that they would go to in the office, because I will do that. So yeah.
Just following what you were talking about with people not feeling confident raising of voices or opinions. In the days of virtual working, one of the best things that I really, really like is at the beginning of all meetings is to set your ways of working. And a great feature that we utilize a lot is that wonderful hands up. So people aren't talking over each other, especially when people have got new voices or opinions, and having someone be able to go, right, this person has got their hand up, they're next, then that person. There are certain tools and techniques that everyone can use to really help be an ally and champion each other.
Brilliant stuff. So I'm going to ask you a bit of a round question here. What advice would you give for learning development to diversify that? Because obviously there is a lot of learning development tools out there, but how are they diverse? And what advice would you give to people if they may not learn the normal way of maybe reading or videos?
Oh man, I have a lot to say about this. So I have to be careful what I say. So I've just been doing I did a 3-month coding bootcamp outside of my employer. Had a very, very, very challenging time with this bootcamp, and it made me mad, because I was like, I can code. I've spent like 9 months proving I can code. Your system sucks, not mine. But I really, really struggled, because I was just completely lacking in clear instructions. With neurodiversity, I just want someone to tell me what to do. It's funny you mentioned ways of working. I have a ways of working document about my neurodiversity. My whole team has read it. They know it really well. And one of the things I have in there is, don't be afraid to give me firm instructions. Like, just tell me to do the thing. Someone else might feel patronized. I need it. But so I think I got really upset I'm still like training outside of my day job, just not like I'm doing an apprenticeship basically. So I still have some training. And I got upset the other day because, okay, they wanted me to build I really hope they're not watching this. They wanted me to build like a Pokemon cards project. And like, I can get excited about everything in the world except Pokemon. I'm just not interested. And it took like half an hour of the class, the instructor and 2 guys, to explain to me that we were just building a Pokemon card project. And I was like, cool. So you made the UI, you made the instructions. Where in the instructions did you say you are building a project? It is a Pokemon cards project. You don't need to clone a repository. Sorry, that's a bit technical, but you don't need to clone a repository. You're building from scratch. You can build it in whatever tech stack you want, and you need to use a CSS framework. Why doesn't it say that? The thing that drives me mad is when people go into the details and don't give me the big picture first. Like, I just need to be told, like, and I say this to my colleagues, but my colleagues are really good at it, so it's not a problem. But like, it's like if you wanted me to just like walk down the street, tell me, walk down the street. Don't tell me like smile at people, wave at people, chew gum. Like, don't tell me that first. Tell me just the instructions, basic clear instructions first.
I like that. We were talking about the ways of working document and having that accessible for people if they wish to have it open, or just given to select different people to figure out what is the best way, whether you follow up any meetings with a Slack message or anything like that. That is something which I've put in place in the organizations that I've been in as well. We were talking about L&D and diversity. So again, two approaches. In terms of different, on that diversity iceberg, if you remember, it's burned into my head now. Yeah, you've got that learning styles aspect, and it's understanding that everyone learns in different ways. And the great thing these days, depends on different providers, of course. I can really speak about a lot of stuff that's around with AWS, is that there are so many different ways that work with different learning styles. So for example, if you like hands-on interactive learning and that's how you learn, you've got sandbox environments and labs. You've also got different aspects. So for example, you've got gamified role-playing games with Cloud Quest that's available, as well as understanding how you learn. You mentioned pen and paper. And unfortunately for me, despite the ridiculous amount of exams I've done in the last 3 years, I learned so slowly. I have to have this thing. You might see it on shelves for decorative purposes, but it's called a book. Right? I have to have a book, and then I have to have my pen and paper, and I write, and I put everything in a certain color-coded order. And sometimes I even have to bandage up my arm because it hurts. I can't just watch a video. I totally, completely admire all those amazing people who watch a video and that information is just there at the touch of their hand, ready to recite verbatim. That's awesome and amazing, and I'm so happy for you. I am, but that's not the learning style, and it's understanding which way, if you're looking at going into different roles and staying true to what works for you. I like doing quotes which are Star Wars based, but persistent without insight will lead to the same outcome from that aspect. And it's understanding what works for you and having the voice to be able to ask for what you're after from that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also could go on for ages about learning difficulty. I'm also a qualified lecturer, so I've done like loads of different jobs just because I get bored. But in terms of learning, yeah, obviously the pen and paper, and that's like because some people need that more kinetic type of learning. And it's not just for primary school kids. And there's, and I think we just sometimes do one type of learning, and well, the whole school system, bless you. But I think we can do it in lots of different ways. But there's other things. It's like, particularly with the tech and everything, you can get these apps now where you can change the font, you can change the color, you can change the contrast, because contrast and stuff like that and the size of your font make a massive difference. But also some people may not realize that whether they're dyslexic or have dyslexic traits, the different color film over a book or put on your screen makes a massive difference. And obviously there's the new font that is like based for like dyslexics, and like if it doesn't work for you, then obviously that's not your thing. But for some people, suddenly they can read. And they can read much quicker and retain it. So we've all got different ways to access our brains. And I guess but that's where the individual bit where we talked about. So I think there's two aspects to that. Again, I always talk about the hidden and the unhidden. So there's the awareness that people will have as to where they're at and their learning style. And that's probably because they've tried the traditional route. But they might not know you can't know what you don't know. So basically, it would be really good that if actually managers and leaders were trained up in various styles, and they might actually be able to tell someone, and say, actually, have you thought of trying, because, a lot of people aren't out as neurodiverse, but also a lot of people, they might not ever win the lucky prize of ADHD, sorry. But if they don't, they might have traits or they might have different learning styles. And I think it's about accommodating that as well. And you know, using things like auditory and, you know, there's lots of different stuff like that. So I think it's what you want to do as an employer is not only those traditional different ways of learning, it's also how can you collectively bring in individualization approach as well as something that supports the masses. So it's a little bit of both. And other things massively make a difference, like environment. When we do pop into offices, I love this environment, by the way. It's, you know, but you know, you need environments that work for people. And there's a lot to be considered there. There's whole guidance and everything. So obviously you're training it, but yeah, so I just think let's think outside of the box as well, apart from the traditional stuff, but not rely just on the person. We should actually, as managers and leaders, also be more aware of the different things that we can offer to the people we're managing.
Yeah, definitely. I also have to write everything down and make loads of notes because I wasn't very academic, and I think that I just still struggle now to remember things. So my memory is not great. So I try and make notes for everything, but I'm also been wanted to try things and actually physically try something, actually give it a go rather than just writing it down. I actually just say, well, I don't know how to do this, so I'm just going to give it a go. So like that I apply that to anything really. And I, you know, very much believer of, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get. It's the same way, you know, if you don't try, you're not going to fail, and you need to learn from your failures. And I really see that in young people. So my eldest son, well, all of my children actually, but definitely my eldest son, is super clever, super intelligent. He's just going to uni and doing business computing, and I'm sure that he'll be very successful at that. But he is really reluctant to try things, because he's scared of getting it wrong, scared of making mistakes. And sometimes I'm like, well, what are you waiting for? Just give it a go. You don't know until you do that. And you know, some of his reports, his school reports, we'd go and see his technology teacher, and she'd say, you know, I don't care how many pieces of material you waste like trying to do this, I have loads of material, just keep trying it, because rather than being scared to try it at all, you're not going to learn anything from doing that. And I think that he's still adverse just to getting his hands dirty and just actually trying something. And I really see the difference between him and his second brother, because you can tell he's already an engineer. He's already trying to fix things and take things apart, and he's already going to be quite hands-on. But I think we all do learn differently, but you've got to find the way that works for you, like you're saying, and be encouraging in the workplace that people learn differently. And I just definitely would give advice to young people just to try it, and just to keep learning from your mistakes, because otherwise you won't.
One thing I was going to point out is if we're looking at LND if we're looking at LND and diverse people, and looking at how to get more diverse people into the workforce from that stance, it's one of those things that sometimes is about who you know, who has access to these different type of resources. I just want to do a little shout out and take this opportunity to make people aware of different ones. So, for example, there are great boot camps and learning places for women in tech, such as, you know, Women Who Code, Code First Girls, Coding Black Females, as well as AWS She Builds Cloud Up, who help support people on their journey, whether it's engineer, project management, product management, or you know, whether you're looking at careers within cyber and architecture. In addition, I'm not sure if people are aware, but do you know that Harvard University actually have their course content online? If you just Google Harvard CS50, all that information is available for everyone to freely, you know, to access, as well as amazing places from Free Code Camp, which is accessible for everybody. And that's a really great way to get into, you know, coding or, you know, APIs or anything like that. But sometimes the hardest bit is where to start and who do you know who knows this. And this is where I think it's a really great thing for allies to have that in their toolbox, to, you know, to make themselves aware. I know I have it inside my link tree, all these different links to different places where you can get access to free or, you know, reduced price places. that helps people from different, social economic backgrounds and make things accessible for all.
Brilliant. And we'll make sure we share some of these links as well on the meetup group and the Slack page, because I'm sure you guys have also got some great links to share as well. I know Czarina's got an absolute wealth of them stashed away. So we'll make sure that we share as many of them as possible. So I think this is the final question for tonight. And this is more sort of forward thinking about what would you like to see if you have a prediction for the next 10 years about building diversity in tech, and also the things that you can foresee that we will have soon, what would they be?
Shall I start this one? Because I have a list. So I like list, only because I've been thinking about this more and more recently, actually, and trying to. I think that a question was asked at the Silicon Brighton last event I attended, and that's what really kind of made me think about this is, what can we do? How can we change this? Rather than saying we need to, everyone says we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to change, but they don't actually say how we need to do that. And I think that I just kind of feel passionate about getting that out there, really. And for me, it's providing the diversity and inclusion training, but it's actually create and enforce policies and procedures that actually you lead by, and hiring and leadership, but being transparent as well, and like publishing your diversity and inclusion data to maintain that transparency. And for me, offering that flexible work arrangements, like I say, to accommodate different needs. That could be someone that takes them longer to get to work because of their disability, so they need to start later. It could be that a mother needs to get her children to school, or it might need that someone needs to have, they have religious beliefs and they need to have longer time off during the day to take part in those activities. The flexibility needs to be visual and promoted and transparent, and ensuring equal pay. That's still a thing. That's still not happening. And we keep saying we're going to do it, but it's actually, no, we are doing it, and actually being actively promoting that and it happening, and be able to prove it. And I think like blind recruiting, I think is something that I'd not even thought about until I'd started looking into this, and it's actually kind of like a no-brainer to me. Like, actually, why do we have CVs with the whether or not they're male or female, or whether or not their surname, which indicates that they have different background, and instantly those unconscious biases are already in place. And someone had said to me that they purposely have changed their name on their CVs to get positions before, which is really just disgusting. So I think that if you have blind recruiting, that's, you're not just saying you're inclusive, you're actually showing that you are, because you're clearly saying it doesn't matter to us where you're from, or your name, or and your gender. So that really shows it. And so that, the unbiased hiring practices, I think, are really important. And also, as I say, moving still on recruitment as well, is making like job adverts actually interesting, because so many tech job adverts I look at that just have this whole list of skills and like wording that I've never seen before. It might as well be written in another language, and it's kind of like, why would you want to work for them? Like, it's just so boring. But it's all must have. You must have this skill, and this is the skills we require, rather than actually personality. Like, just literally doesn't come into it. So it's kind of even just changing the wording to be, ideally you will have this. However, we will still consider your application. If you don't meet 3 years of this, you only have 2 years in this particular area, we will still look at your application. And actually putting on the job adverts your inclusion policies at the bottom, actually saying we do this, and the flexible working's not just, oh, you can work from home 1 day a week. It's actually, we'll be really flexible and we'll work around you and your home life. Because we want to keep you, we want you to work for us. And for me personally, like, if someone's going to give me a chance, and if they show me that they're giving me that flexibility, I'm going to work my butt off for them. I'm going to give that back. I'm going to stay on late when I don't need to. I'm going to attend things that, that are going above and beyond, because they do the same for me. And that's actually just proving it rather than talking about it.
I think we have time for one more
Sorry.
answer. No, it's brilliant. So.
I mean, I love that world. I'm going to live there. And I think the whole point is that actually everyone gets a chance to shine, to use their superpowers, because we all have them, and it's just been actually given the opportunity and a fair chance that is the vital thing. And also, very much, it will be a place, hopefully, where people can actually use a rhythm for results that actually works for them and will work in the collective. We know some people are morning people, late people, like you said, the school drop off and stuff like that. When I became an adopted parent, they let me work from home when it wasn't even a thing. And that made a massive difference. And so a world where those differences can actually be not just honored, but actually, kind of celebrated, and actually it becomes a whole team thing, community, that we play to that. So it's accounting for all the differences where it's socioeconomic, so people get a chance to be, that they will be at the table. They're not getting the chance. And it's interesting that we keep talking about female and male, and I agree about the ceiling. But if you spot any non-binary people in senior management positions at all, please do let me know. So obviously in that world, that's going to be all fine as well. And we're going to we're a small representative in the population, but we actually might even feature vaguely in the managers. Would be nice.
Brilliant. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys. I've done it. You folks. It's been brilliant hearing your stories. And do we have any time for questions, Alex? Oh, brilliant.